Well, hello YouTube, it's me Fortmaster, and welcome to another game theory reaction, and this is everything you know about FNAF is a lie. So, yeah, I was kind of expecting a video with that kind of title, given, everything that was seen in Secret of the Mimic, and learning just how interconnected Fazbear was with MCM, with Murray's Costume Manor. Did change a lot of the things we thought about, and I have seen a lot of people question, like, oh, what did Henry even do in the company if he didn't design some of this stuff? And, I mean, I've been thinking about whether or not I should make a video of myself, just kind of like putting out my thoughts, but I'm going to probably have to do that after I watch this video just to see, if they have any convincing evidence. Either way, the fact that William Afton seemingly poached literally all of, Edwin's employees, just to bankrupt his company and buy him out. Given everything we've known about, William, that is totally in character. I don't know why some people were so surprised by that. My own personal headcanon, though, and I'm going to keep it until I see proof stating otherwise, is that Henry was not aware of any of this going on. Though, alternatively, I could also see another way where he wasn't, like, fully in the know, but he knew something was up and just sort of turned a blind eye to it. And I could definitely see that contributing to the whole thing, where in the Pizzeria Simulator, you hear the tapes and stuff like that, where Henry's basically saying, like, oh yeah, I did nothing, and, like, even though I should have done something, something like that. I could definitely see that. But yeah, I mean, Secret of the Mimic shook up a lot of granted, Secret of the Mimic was a very good game, and it shook up a lot of the lore, and now, I'm excited to see how, game theory fits it into their, the ever-changing timeline of FNAF, because this thing, it's like a non-Newtonian fluid. It's subtly changing, but as soon as you try to hit it, it turns solid for like a split second. But yeah, with all that out of the way, we should probably get this thing started. So yeah, of course, as always, original videos linked in the description if you haven't seen it yet for some reason. Corner video will lead to my film theory react. And if you like this video or any other video that I make, I'd very much appreciate it if you gave the video a like and subscribe to my channel, because almost 3/4 of the people who watch my videos aren't subscribed. Because now that I've finally hit 5,000 subscribers, my current goal is to hopefully hit 10,000 by the end of the year, and we'll definitely have to see if that's possible. But yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
Secret of the Mimic is finally here, and it changes everything. Our understanding of the books, our understanding of the timeline, and our understanding of the characters we've come to know over the last 11 years. But as always, I'm here to pull an Afton, or an Edwin, as it turns out, and put it all back together.
Edwin didn't really put anything together. He built the Mimic, but then it killed him, and then, yeah.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that's jaw has been hanging open like a badly made Chica costume ever since the release of FNAF's Secret of the Mimic. And I'm not alone in that feeling. Every single YouTuber has been completely sideswiped by this game.
Chica! I can't believe we got Chica! Hey!
Oh my god, there she is! That's insane! Has it taken us all by surprise? Well, besides the fact the game actually works, mostly, it also did something that is completely unheard of in a FNAF game. They actually gave us a story. And
out of context, that is just, it's so funny. But yeah, that's the whole thing. Kind of going aside, I remember watching Markiplier's playthrough, and he was talking about how he missed the old FNAF, stuff like that. But very much like, unlike basically any FNAF game before it, this is the first game where the lore is actually really easy to find. And while, I've watched a couple of videos, and they have kind of pointed some things out where the lore is layered. You have, like, layers of, like, very surface level lore, like the story that, fills in some gaps, but then you have stuff that's more hidden and more, and like, the deeper you go, the more you have to connect the dots. But yeah, honestly, this is the first FNAF game, like, even going back to, like, Security Breach or something like that, like, yeah, you played through the game, but there was no real lore actually given. It was a lot of speculation. This one, on the other hand, like, you find like emails and like and all that sort of stuff and like audio recordings. It's the lore is just there.
I don't mean the super cryptic kind that we have to spend years and years figuring out. I mean the kind that actually helps us move forward in this franchise. For a long time, the community has been frustrated with the lack of clarification out there for this series. It's been years of theory upon theory upon theory. And while we have come to certain agreements for parts of it, there are still massive sections of the lore that we haven't been able to agree on simply because there's never really been a solid foundation to jump off of. But now, after 11 years of this franchise, Secret of the Mimic came as the earliest entry in the FNAF timeline and said, guys, I got you, giving us relatively clear breakdowns of how the early years of Fazbear came to be, as well as throwing a bunch of hand cranks into the works that make us question everything we knew about this franchise.
Yeah, I mean, again, like the number of people that were just claiming that's like, oh, Henry is evil or Henry did nothing. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of people seem to be forgetting that it was specifically stated that MCM, the company, was contracted out by Fazbear to make stuff. So I don't know why everybody was freaking out so much over that.
There's timelines that have been displaced, character personas completely shattered, and understandings of where the future of this franchise is going totally flipped on its head. And I intend to theorize about all of it in a 3-part series across the next month or so, focusing on the 3 main characters from this new game: the newcomer Edwin Murray and his family, the big bad Mimic, and, of course, Fazbear Entertainment, William Afton, and Henry. All of that will then be followed up with a live talkback with a bunch of other FNAF theorists to discuss the game, our differing theories, and generally just talking about the franchise that we've all enjoyed for so long. Dates for that are TBD right now, so make sure you're subscribed so that when I do announce it, you'll be the first to know, and to make sure you don't miss all of the crazy theories leading up to it, because believe me, you don't want to miss them. There are some real bombshells in this game that I want to explore. But for now, let's start from the beginning. We jump into the game as a lowly mechanic working for the wonderful as always Fazbear Entertainment. Our name is Arnold, and we've just gotten off of a 36-hour shift, only to be called in for one last job to help recover some Fazbear assets from one of their contractors.
Which, okay, actually thinking about, granted, I know this game takes place in 1979, or was it? Yeah, 79. And I've been kind of thinking about that. So, I mean, granted, I don't, American labor laws in the 70s are not my specialty, but I'd have to wonder, like, how much was Arthur actually getting paid? Because at that point, like, at least thinking with like modern labor laws, which again I know is different from ones in the 70s, but you'd think anything after like 8 hours on shift would be overtime. So he's getting paid, so he's probably getting paid time and a half for that, unless he's like salaried or something like that, which that kind of spoils the whole thing.
Edwin Murray. Begrudgingly, we head to Murray's costume manor, only to discover the asset is a set of blueprints for a killer animatronic endoskeleton that can fit into any costume and learn the role of any character or person, the Mimic. We gain access to different areas of the facility by upgrading our data diver with different permissions, from basic to security, repair, all the way up to executive privileges, all while trying to outrun or outweight the Mimic.
He's going for it.
Eventually, we get our hands on the blueprints, only to discover that it wasn't Fazbear talking to us through dispatch. It was the Mimic pretending to be them to get their hands on the data diver.
Though the thing is, they weren't doing it constantly. I don't know, I'm kind of fiddly on like the specifics here. From what I've seen, I think there is a specific point at which Fiona, which will be, spoiled later, but, the other Mimic program, the one that's not in the body, because there's 2 of them, but that one, I'm pretty sure she's the one mimicking dispatch, and there's a point at the game early on where, like, the signal you get over, like, the intercom, it gets all staticky and weird. I'm pretty sure that's pretty sure at the very least that's when Fiona takes over speaking as dispatch.
This leads to one of 3 endings where we either escape and get killed by the Mimic, we escape and get killed by the Mimic, or we fix the Mimic and then just stand there watching it sleep. Now, these guys deserve an episode of their own, because whichever one is canon could have massive implications.
Okay, actually, you know what? I literally just watched a video earlier this morning, you know, talking about these endings and what they could potentially mean, and which one could potentially be canon. By Rytoast. I'm upset I didn't, you know, do a reaction to it, but hey, you know, it was 7 in the morning for me. Actually, if I go back here, excuse me, Tom, need you to get out of the way. Okay. So we have the 3 endings here. We have the one where the Mimic is in the van. We have the one where the Mimic crashes through the window, and then we have little baby Mimic ending over here. He was talking about, and if I remember to do so, I'll link his video in the description so you can actually watch it too. His thoughts for which was the canon ending is actually the one where you're left in the car, because Fiona, the Mimic program that's mimicking Edwin's wife, and kind of thinks she is Edwin's wife. Her, like, one and only goal in the game is to fix M2, the Mimic that is in the body, because she thinks of it as her child, David. But again, being the mother, she wants him fixed. And to do so, she needs, you know, all the permissions on the data dimer. Now, I'm forgetting which, but during this ending right here, you activate a program called Cradle. And I'll shorten it just so I don't, like, say everything in Rytoast's video. But his theory was that in this ending, the Mimic doesn't kill you directly. Yes, they cause, you know, Arnold to, you know, crash the car. But Arnold's just laying in the wreck as the car is bursting into flames. The Mimic doesn't actually kill them. All the Mimic does is grab the data diver off of Arthur and then walk away, leaving him just in the wreck. Because, as Rytoast suggested, in this ending there is a part where you activate a Cradle program, a program called Cradle, and the idea that Ry came up with was that Cradle caused the 2 Mimic programs to switch. As in, you know, you have the M2 program, the one that's been trying to murder you throughout the entire game, go and put it into the data, like the computer program, like the server that Fiona was in, and then puts Fiona into the body. And then, since the only thing Fiona wants is to fix her kid, she basically leaves Arthur there to die, but just takes the tool so that she can work on fixing, you know, the M2 Mimic. Again, hopefully, if I do not, again, so anybody watch this video in the future, if I forget to link Rytoast's video in the description, make sure to actually comment on the video to remind me so I actually do that, you know.
Whichever one is canon could have massive implications that I just don't have time to get into right now. Instead, let's turn our attention to the stuff we can discover during the game, and the first of our big 3 characters, Edwin Murray. If you're a longtime viewer of this channel, or you're one of the people who understands my pain and has actually read the books, then that name isn't anything new. Edwin Murray is a character that we were introduced to in both Storyteller and the Mimic from the Tales from the Peterplex series. His company was bought out by Fazbear. He created the Mimic to babysit his son David, but his son tragically died. And because the Mimic kept mimicking his dead son, he beat the thing up, teaching it violence, and then showed up 40 years later trying to stop it. However, when the Secret of the Mimic's creative director Evan Lampe said to Dorco,
"If you've read the books, you don't know the full story,"
he wasn't kidding. The
Right,
story
definitely.
of Edwin goes so much deeper and is so much more tragic than we could have ever realized.
Yeah, and it's also a lot different because we get confirmation that Edwin is dead. Like, literally, there's a part, you know, near the end of the game, if you haven't seen it, where, in that second ending I was talking about before, you find, you know, another audio recording, but it's now the Mimic mimicking Edwin, as Edwin, I should say, is lying under a pile of rubble, and can't feel his legs. Which, as another thing, in that ending, the factory's being swarmed by all these little tiny, like, junk bots. And my whole headcanon, and I hope it's true, is the fact that while the Mimic was mimicking Edwin, that was the Mimic's attempt to make robots itself, because it was mimicking Edwin who made robots. And that's why they're all weird and doopy.
As Arnold explores Murray's costume manor, we can find audio recordings and mailboxes containing digital text logs that give us the real story of what happened to this place. It was originally owned by Edwin's father, who we'll call Murray Sr. Edwin Murray works for him.
Edwin, Edwin Murray. This is my dad's place.
You know, because nepotism. But Edwin is the quirky,
honestly,
inventor
nepotism is
type, and
the
to
only
test out
thing that
his
you
new
can do
voice recorder
nowadays.
creation, he seeks out one of the new employees and former puppeteers.
Excuse me, can I borrow your voice for a project?
What for? I don't even know you. I'm brand new here. Let's start again. I'm Fiona.
Murray Sr. then passes away and leaves the whole thing to Edwin, who rebrands everything to bring his wacky inventions to life.
Maybe rebrand? We could start making some of my inventions for real.
Together with Fiona, they invent a bunch of wild tech, like a coffee machine that can learn your coffee preferences to make the perfect cup, a coat hanger that can adjust to any size you need, and an adorable vacuum cleaner. Oh, just look at him with his tiny little brooms and his little dumpy. Anyway, alongside this, he is also making a bunch of costumes, which I suppose makes sense given that's the name of the business. But the characters we see are interesting if you're a FNAF fan. We see a handful of characters that you might recognize, like Pirate and Cowgirl Roxy, Hillbilly Monty, a puppet pirate Foxy, and the big one, a rollerblading costume of Chica. It is, that's freaking Chica.
Let's party.
She really was the first, wasn't she?
Okay, so just all those things, because again, I've seen a couple of people when they talk about it, they kind of get confused or misunderstand a bunch of stuff. And actually, and some of the things, and one thing that a lot of people seem to like gloss over and stuff like that is the fact that Edwin's company, MCM, was already struggling before Fazbear, or more accurately, before Afton started doing things behind the scenes here, because even Fiona says Edwin has a bad habit of having like multiple projects going on at once and never truly finishing any of them. Like, I forget where it is, but there's literally a, not a recording, but there's a message somewhere where they're getting, like, lots of returns for some of the more, like, advanced, I think it was for, like, the coffee maker, the Wake Up Latte or whatever. Because while it initially worked, while they did work and were very advanced, they weren't very refined. So all of his inventions ended up having, like, lots of flaws that people didn't like and ended up returning. So even before, Afton started, messing things up with, like, their orders and poaching employees, Edwin's company was already on sort of an uneven, rocky footing. And then with all the other characters, like, I mean, Chica, I have no issue with the fact that Edwin designed Chica. We've known for a while now that Chica came from another restaurant that was kind of absorbed, called Chica's Party World. Now, I don't know if it's been said anywhere whether Chica's Party World was a part of Fazbear or if there was an independent company that was then just absorbed later on. But either way, it really doesn't matter. The stuff that really confuses me, I have no problem with, like, Monty and Roxanne originally being MCM characters. I kind of like that idea. Thinking about it, I actually do kind of like that idea, simply because it kind of makes it sound like, oh yeah, like, where Fazbear has the rights to all these characters, but they usually just stick with, the main four that they have, and then it's only until, like, you get to the Pizzaplex, where, like, they decided to mix things up and pull other characters from their back catalog out. Foxy, though. Foxy's the one that confuses me, because actually thinking about it, while we see Foxy, like the puppet Foxy, we never see anything, like, official. The only place we ever see Foxy in is, like, in the for lack of a better term, the AI movie set area, where like the puppet show is being done automatically. And, I mean, I could very much see that that's not an actual character that MCM owned the rights to. It might have been, since they worked with Fazbear, maybe that's, a character that they basically borrowed from Fazbear, given that it was just being used for, like, a test show and not being, like, sold themselves. I hope I'm getting across what I mean here. And then there's the whole thing with like the prototype designs in the basement.
But besides Chica, who Edwin and Fiona were specifically hired to make for a client, Chica's Party World, yes, that Chica's Party World, all of these other characters were rentable or purchasable from Murray's Costume Manor, meaning Edwin owned these characters. They weren't originally Fazbear's. However, Fazbear was around as another one of Edwin's clients, taking interest in his technological genius, even to the point where Edwin refers to Henry as simply Hen in the audio logs, presumably because they have a level of familiarity and friendship thanks to their shared technological creativity.
I got the change order from Hen last night. They don't think of me as a friend anymore.
But the real tragedy of Edwin comes from when we look at his family. I've mentioned his wife Fiona, but he also has a son named David, just like he did in the Tales from the Pizzaplex book series. Unlike that series though, Fiona doesn't die in childbirth. She's still around during David's early years, until she tragically passes away, leaving Edwin to run the business and raise David all on his own, leading Edwin to come up with the only logical solution:
a
build
robot
an
nanny
animatronic that can babysit David, obviously. He creates the M1 Mimic, but something strange happens. It begins to not just look after David, but mimic Edwin's dead wife, Fiona. The family is back together again, until it's not. One day, David dies outside the facility, leaving Edwin completely devastated. At the same time, the business is completely crumbling around him.
Okay, just going back to the whole thing when David dies, I've seen a couple of people talking about it, and there's a couple of things that kind of that could take the story in multiple different directions. One, I saw some people theorizing that it might have been Afton who ran over, David. Which, I mean, while that would be funny and just very, like, horrible, I don't think that's true. Also, there was some other people, though, that were suggesting that Fiona might have purposely let David die. And, again, that's another one I don't quite believe, but the reasoning for it was that, the Mimic was taking on the persona of, Fiona. But since Fiona, and kind of, it wasn't a perfect copy, it was more like you took Fiona, sanded down most of her personality traits, but cranked up the fact that she was a mother up to like 11 or 10 or 11. And the idea was that, her wanting to be a mother, she wanted a child that was more like her, a robot. And so she let human David die to convince Edwin to make a second mimic so that they could have a robot David, so she could have her own robot kid. Now, again, that's one of those theories that I don't believe, but man, that would be sick and twisted if that was true.
But M1 Fiona has a solution. Make another one of her.
Edwin, you can't put it off any longer. You need to try again. Build another.
Make another mimic that would now mimic David so that they could be together again. Edwin isn't convinced at first, but eventually he gives in. He takes M1 out of the endoskeleton, copies the program, and creates M2, putting the new program into the endoskeleton. And it works. M2 begins acting like David, but it's too much for Edwin to handle, and he snaps, beating the animatronic, breaking its legs, and teaching it the valuable lesson of violence that Arnold now gets to experience firsthand. With that failure under his belt and the business still struggling, Edwin locks himself away with his final Fazbear project, a restaurant called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. But M2 has other plans. It destroys the house, and Edwin is never seen or heard from again. It's a real sad ending, but you see what I mean about how it upends a lot of what we thought we knew? We've got characters we thought were Fazbear's now created by someone else. We've got a wildly different setup to Edwin and his family than we...
Well, I mean, the whole thing, like, the whole project was Fazbear's. Like, the restaurant was being made, he was designing the restaurant for Fazbear by Fazbear. Like, they were the ones paying him. Again, one of the main reasons why the company was struggling so much near the end and was so close to bankruptcy was because Edwin kept getting change orders for stuff in the restaurant to change. Like, one of the recordings you hear is talking about how they no longer want the Springlock suits anymore. And then there's Edwin complaining about, it's like, oh, what's wrong with the spring loops? Just keep using them as they did before, that sort of deal.
we saw in the books, and this is just the top level stuff that's been given to us on a plate. The more you dig into these things, the more things begin to change and shift our understanding of the entire franchise. But we've got some time, so let's keep things simple for now. We've been given a bunch of information about Edwin, his family, and his company. But what is the timeline of these events? This is FNAF after all. Timelines are a staple for FNAF theorists everywhere. And I don't just mean a vague order of events. I mean cold, hard dates. Well, as you might expect, this game is pretty careful to leave those sorts of details hidden, only giving us months or days for dates at best. They even block out years so we can't place exact details.
Oh god, I never noticed that. Really? Oh. I mean, granted, that one, it kind of looks like a smudged out 5, so I could see that.
But when has that ever stopped us before? Let's start with the very first teaser for this game. In it, we saw the number 1979 showing up on a film reel, giving us a pretty good indication that that was when this game would take place. And once we boot up the game, that does seem to still be the case. In Arnold's van, we come across his work order to collect an endoskeleton from Murray's Costume Manor. The job he is literally on. That work order contains both an issue date and a signing date, which both end up being the same date, September 7th, 1979. I suppose that means that the Mimic not only faked Dispatch's voice, but also sent a fake work order? And wait, does that mean that Arnold has a fax machine hidden in this van? What other mysteries does this van hold? Oh, Arnold, you teasing enigma.
I mean, there is definitely a lot going on with this van. I mean, you just have to look at that very precariously hanging, like, heater right there, which, actually thinking about it, while he's driving, would be right behind his head. But again, like, as I'm saying, like, I think Dispatch sent him there in the first place, but then was cut off, because again, like, Dispatch was messaged later on in the game in one of the endings saying that, hey, we've been trying to reach you all night, like, what happened? Because depending, like, I think it's around, like, I think it's either midnight or 1 o'clock that you get the weird message, you get the weird interference before, you know, the Fiona takes over. So yeah, I can definitely see, you know, we sent you on a job and then there's just nothing for several hours. Yeah, I can definitely see them being freaked out because of that.
So, okay, we have the end of our timeline for this game, but as I've kind of already mentioned, that's like the least interesting part of this game's story. We're really here for the Edwin Murray drama. But don't worry, I think we can figure that one out too, thanks to FNAF's longest running trope, dead kids. Well, kid, specifically his
Just
son, David Murray. At the end of the game, you're given a choice. Either give the data diver back or execute something called parachute.exe. This opens up a hatch in the floor leading to the R&D department and the Murray's house that's on top of the hill near the factory. While trying to avoid M2, you can come across 5 film reels showing some good old-fashioned Murray family home video for David's birthdays. The first is a little uneventful. He gets scared by a new Pirate Roxy puppet and is given his iconic white tiger plushie. The second, Edwin misses because he's too busy working. The third, Edwin breaks the news to David that Mummy isn't coming back. By the fourth, we see Edwin give David his slide that we see out the front of Murray's Costume Manor, with the robotic voice of M1 Fiona coming from off screen. And then finally, we get number 5, where we see Fiona in all her mimicky animatronic glory.
Actually, wait a second. Yeah, I never noticed that. Right, these are like subsequent birthdays over several years. So the Fiona mimic was there for at least a year or two. I never thought of that. Okay, interesting.
She made a cake for David's birthday and is asked to go outside and collect David before the party gets started. And it's that last video that is crucial to solving this mystery. When M1 Fiona presents her cake, we can see the room she's in, and it's not the Murray's family home like all the others. This is actually an office inside Murray's Costume Manor. And we know that because if you're willing to spend a lot of time avoiding rollerblading Chica, you actually get to see this room firsthand, complete with all the same decorations.
Oh god, so that either means that the game takes place really soon after David's death, or the factory was abandoned for a while. Like, wait, I forget. Did we see, like, was any of the food rotting?
Oh my gosh. Happy birthday, David.
The place looks abandoned. The food has been there a while, now all molded over. And we find out why thanks to the text logs that we have to collect to figure out the password for this room. On December 1st, Edwin sends out a work memo telling the workers that they need to be here on Saturday for David's party. Then there's a bunch of more light-hearted, jokey messages between the other employees about the room code, but on the 6th...
Okay, actually thinking about it, that is a very weird request. Like, can you imagine, like, you're going to work and you get a message from your boss saying you have to attend his kid's birthday party? Like that is kind of creepy now that I think about it.
Tone shifts. A message tells everyone that the party has been cancelled due to recent tragic events. With the state of the room, the notices we find about not bringing children to work, and the fact that the playground Edwin refers to must be the play park he got David for one of his birthdays, the one near the loading bay, the one he was warned would be too dangerous to have a kid near.
Look, I get your concern. I do. But they're all just groundlings. This is the perfect spot for David's playground.
It all adds up to this being the day that David died. On Saturday, December 6th, everyone was there gathered together just like Edwin had asked, only for M1 to go down to find David and report him dead.
Okay, everyone hide. Fiona, go get him.
Saturday was the day of the party, and that cancellation message was sent out the same day. December 6th was only on a Saturday once in the 1970s. 1975. Now, given we have 5 film reels, you'd assume that would make this David's 5th birthday, and so his date of birth would be December 6th, 1970. However, I'm not entirely sure that's the case. Firstly, the achievement you get for entering David's party room is called Belated Birthday, and the icon is of a birthday cake with not 5 candles, but 6. And I think we all know that when you're a kid, the number of candles on your cake matters big time. I guess just like content creators, we all like seeing number go up. There's also the matter of the collectibles scattered throughout MCM. By gathering them all, you can boot up a minigame on the computers known as moon.exe. This thing is full of interesting details and symbolism that we will 100% be exploring in the future, but the detail that's interesting right now...
Yeah, actually, if I remember correctly, one of the things people pointed to suggesting that Mimic Fiona was the one that ended up actually killing or letting David die was the fact that in the game, you come across a character called Sun, which, you know, there has heavy implications of being just Fiona. But in the minigame, you have like a baby owl with you, but afterwards, when you meet her, and you fix some, you know, masks, the baby owl disappears and you're given an owl mask for yourself. But if you look around the kitchen afterwards, you can, it's said that there is now the smell of chicken coming from her oven.
Is the collectible called the Full Fest Snow Globe. When you find it again inside moon.exe, you can give it a shake, and we're given this description. Opening day snow globe. A wonderful day with all of us at Full Fest. It's worth noting that right behind this snow globe is a statue of a married couple. The man wears a bow tie, which is something we see associated with Edwin throughout the game. I mean, just look at the guy's logo. He loves bow ties.
Bow ties are cool.
This couple is supposed to be Edwin and Fiona, and so this line about Full Fest is tied to them. But the use of the word all here is telling. If it was just supposed to be Edwin and Fiona, it would have just said both of us or the two of us. But all implies a group, i.e. David is also present. Thanks to Help Wanted 2, the earliest Full Fest we know about happened in 1970. So for this to be a big opening day to the point where Fazbear creates a special snow globe, it's likely that it's that year being referenced, 1970. And if Scott cares at all about giving this series any kind of logical consistency, Fall Fest would likely have to happen in the autumn. Fine, fall.
No, autumn's correct. I hate the British bullying here.
David's birthday being established as December 6th, it would be physically impossible for him to also be here on the opening day of Fall Fest in 1970, because he wouldn't have been born for another couple of months. So he'd have to have been born at least a year earlier, making him at minimum 6. But then why only show us 5 videos? What happened to the missing birthday? Well, we already know that Edwin is too busy to focus on his kid, hence he made the mimic in the first place. Would it be out of the realm of possibility possibility that he was so busy he didn't even celebrate one of his kids' birthdays. The game certainly seems to think so, because inside the Storytime showroom you can find David's little den with all of his drawings on the wall, and one of them depicts a birthday with David surrounded not by family but by characters, and he has a cake with 4 candles on it. Up until now, David's parties have always been at his house, surrounded by family, not by characters. We never see a video of him having a birthday surrounded by characters, which implies that this is a birthday not caught on camera. Edwin missed his son's 4th birthday. He was so busy trying to save the company and possibly even building M1 that he got his staff to dress up as characters and look after him instead. Then, a year later, David gets his big slide and suddenly M1 Fiona exists to take care of David. This puts David's 6th birthday in 1975, and therefore his date of birth is actually December 6th, 1969. Nice. From here we can actually extrapolate a few other dates and start to put things into a rough timeline. We never get exact ages for Edwin and Fiona, but we do know that David was their first and only child. In the late 60s and early 70s, the average age of first-time parents was 21.4 years old. And looking at marriages in the late 1960s, the average man was 23, while the average woman was about 20 when they got married. If Fiona is following these averages, that would mean they pretty much had David just over a year after getting married, putting their wedding in 1968. On top of that, the average length of an engagement for a couple in the 1960s was around just 3 to 6 months, with the ideal scenario being a fall engagement with a spring or summer wedding. And
God, things have changed. I mean, like thinking back to my, my parents, and like I was born in 1995, but like my parents dated for like, I think like 5 years, 4 or 5 years before I was born. So much so that our original house, where I grew up in as a child, they actually were renovating that house while they were dating. I mean, then there's the whole thing that my mom got married rather late in life as well. So, geez, yeah. Things change, don't they?
most would only have been dating for 6 months prior to that. So Fiona and Edwin most likely would have gotten engaged in the fall of 1967 and probably only started dating earlier that year. But as I've already told you, this relationship ends far too prematurely. One of the audio logs we find throughout the facility is a voice recording left by Fiona to Edwin explaining that she needs to go to one of their clients' events to make sure nothing goes wrong.
I have to go help the Fall Fest crew. I just have this terrible feeling like I need to be there so nothing goes wrong.
Now, remember that part of Moon.exe I mentioned earlier that shows us the married couple? The one representing Edwin and Fiona with the Fall Fest snow globe at their feet? Well, the woman's statue is described as being burnt and blackened. There's also a stall nearby that focuses on sewing materials, like a stand for someone who was maybe there to help with costumes and puppeteering, similar to what we know Fiona was capable of. That stand is also completely burnt down and destroyed. Putting all of that together, it clearly tells us that the event Fiona went to was Fall Fest, the Fazbear Carnival we've been theorizing about for so long. And just as we've been predicting, it absolutely did end in fire, taking Fiona's life with it. Edwin breaks this news to David on his 3rd birthday, and as we've established, Fall Fest should happen in the fall just before that. So that puts Fiona's death sometime between September and November 1970. So, right now, our timeline looks like this. Edwin and Fiona start dating in early 1967. They then get engaged in the fall of that year, which I'm now only just realizing might explain why they're in wedding outfits in Moon.exe. They're next to the Fall Fest snow globe. It's the same time of year, almost as if they're going to Fall Fest like some kind of anniversary celebration. Anyway, they get married in 1968 and have David in 1969. A few years passed, and in the fall of 1972, Fiona goes to Fall Fest and dies in a fire. Edwin then creates the Mimic over the next couple of years. But on the day of David's 6th birthday in 1975, David dies outside the facility. Edwin falls into a pit of despair. He tries to bring back David as M2, but gets angry, beats it up, and disappears, leaving M2 to roam the facility and Fazbear to grow impatient with Edwin's lack of deliverables, and so they send in Arnold to take what is theirs in September 1979. But there is one more date we're able to track thanks to all of this. The death of Murray Sr.
Okay, I mean, yeah, I was going to ask why do we need to know that, but at the same time, I mean, it's always good. After all of the for lack of a better word, trauma that the FNAF, franchise and FNAF fandom has had over, inconsistent and odd and hard to figure out timelines. Having, like, a timeline where we can have actual solid dates, yeah, I can definitely see there's a fair level of catharsis here.
Now, look, I know he may not seem like an important character in all of this. Let's be honest, he's kind of a footnote in the whole game. We only see his portrait a couple of times, and we only get 2 audio logs even mentioning him. But those 2 audio logs reveal a lot, not only about when he died, but also the final order of events for Murray's Costume Manor, and an interesting detail about our favorite singing bear company. In the audio log where we learn about Murray Sr.'s passing, it's a conversation between Edwin and Fiona. So they do have to have at least met at this point. Plus, they seem quite close.
The company is going to collapse and they're all going to hate me.
Ed, you'll figure it out. Just take a deep breath. It's your company now. Your dad believed in you. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left it to you.
She's being encouraging in the way that a supportive partner would and should. So they're most likely at least dating when he passes. But the real key comes from when you backtrack through the entire game to find this specific Mr. Helpful. I mentioned earlier how we get new permissions for our data diver throughout the game to access new areas. Well, that isn't the only thing you get to access. The Mr. and Mrs. Helpfuls throughout the facility also have different responses depending on the staff level that is talking to them. If you go back and find them all once you get executive level access, we actually start to hear messages recorded by Edwin or Fiona directly addressing one another. And this one right here is very interesting indeed.
Yeah, it's the one where he proposes. Now with this, I very much hope that, in universe, how it worked was that she he's hiding, she activates it, is listening to the message, and then when she turns around, he's there kneeling with the ring and stuff like that. That would be just so adorable.
I've got something very important to ask you, okay? Here goes. You become the heart of this company, and I want to share it with you. And you're also really pretty, like asymmetrical pretty, so will you marry me, please?
Yes, it's very nerdy and very sweet, just like how I proposed. The point is, during Edwin's awkward ramblings, he says this line.
You become the heart of this company.
You are the heart of the company. When they met, she was just a new employee. There's no way she would be that instrumental to the company and its quote-unquote heart. However, once Murray Sr. passed on and Edwin was left in charge, Fiona became his main collaborator. She is the one who cared for the employees and the company while Edwin was off making more crazy inventions. We can even hear her concern during the pre-recorded elevator repair tapes.
Please follow the instructions to reset the elevator. Sounds scary.
It feels like she's reading a script and she's kind of concerned about what she's reading.
It's only once Edwin takes over that Fiona has the opportunity to fill the position as the heart of the company. And also, this recording is on a helpful. One of the things that Edwin would only have been able to install fully once he'd taken over.
Could start making some of my inventions for real.
All of that to say that Murray Sr. died sometime between Edwin and Fiona dating and them getting engaged, placing it sometime in 1967. And that's an important detail because while it seems early in most timelines for this franchise, Murray Sr. appears to have some kind of connection with Fazbear Entertainment, even before he passes and hands the company over to Edwin. In a number of the audio logs you can find later on in the game, it becomes very clear that Edwin is getting a little bit paranoid.
Edwin, never forget, they're behind it. Don't trust them. Never tell them they want to destroy you. Dad was right.
Now, you may be asking, who is this them, and what is it he's not supposed to be telling them? Well, through another couple of audio and text logs, both of those answers become quite easy to figure out. In literally the next audio log you can obtain, Edwin tells us that there's a leak in the company.
I figured it out. There's a leak. Someone told them about M2. Well, they can't have it.
M2, the brand new mimic that can adjust to any costume and mimic any character or person, is what's being leaked. And with that in mind, the they becomes even easier to figure out. A bunch of the text logs have a consistent running theme. Working for Murray's Costume Manor sucks. They want out.
One more injury and I'm out of here. I mean it this time. Barb, I swear, if I hear that song one more time, I'm going to tear that dolly off her hinges.
I have no clue how much longer I can take it here.
Some of them leave on their own accord, while others are being poached by a rival company.
We're almost there. I need the rest of the Murray staff contact info. The sooner the better.
WA, yeah.
You get that for me, and I can sweeten the deal. How would you like to manage one of the new franchise locations? WA.
That's right, good old Willie A is here, and he's as evil a businessman as we always thought. Fazbear is actively stealing not just employees, but their business secrets. So, it's Fazbear that is, quote, behind it. They are the ones who want to destroy Edwin, and he is reminding himself to not let them have the Mimic program. But do you remember the last thing he said?
Dad was right.
Dad was right. This mini paranoid speech is all about how Fazbear isn't to be trusted, and those words of advice came from Edwin's father. How? Because clearly Murray Sr. knew about Fazbear, Afton, and all of their shady business practices. Either because Murray Sr. was already in business with them prior to his death, or simply because MCM had been around for a while, and so he'd have likely seen how they operated and how small businesses they were working with suddenly disappeared. And so he made sure to warn his son about them. We all knew that Fazbear had been around a lot longer than we thought with the introduction of the 1970s Fall Fest poster in Help Wanted 2, but now it seems that they go back even further. Sure, it's only a few more years on paper, but just like everything in this game, we're being shown that we can't strictly rely on what we think we know as definitive. If we thought this prequel destroyed our understanding of the franchise, just wait until we learn about what was going on before all of this.
God, okay, honestly, like, I remember when, you know, Matt Pat did his, like, huge ultimate, like, FNAF timeline. A lot of people were kind of, like, joking and kind of, like, confused by the whole thing. It's like, oh, Afton was, like, so old and stuff like that. But honestly, the more I'm thinking about it, maybe it's just been, like, either William Afton is, you know, a lot older than we thought he was, and he had a family later in life. Or alternatively, maybe Fazbear has just always been a bad company, and it just had a long string of like, basically evil executives. I mean, who knows?
First, it's a few more years into the 1960s, but who knows how far back it goes? Maybe Matt and I weren't so far off with the whole singing bear in the 1930s. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching.
God, honestly, again, I've talked about before that, you know, a security breach was very much a dark stain on, you know, on FNAF, because it was too big for its own good. And while, like, Steelwool has, like, gotten back up to speed and stuff like that, it's Secret of the Mimic basically took, like, everything that was good with a security breach and kind of basically fixed it. Like, it's an open world game, but it's not overly huge, so it's easier to not get lost, and also the game doesn't have to handle these giant wide open spaces. And like it's easier to feel both safe and more threatened than before, with like the distinct areas that the Mimic will appear and not appear. And also, you know, the collectibles actually mean something. God, honestly, again, like, I am very happy, and I can totally get, you know, people saying that, like, that they don't like the way FNAF has gone, or that it's changed too much. Like, I totally get that. But honestly, if we can get more FNAF games like this, like more lore that's on the surface easy to understand, but then gets just exponentially deeper the more you look into it, where you can kind of have the best of both worlds when it comes to figuring out, like, history and lore, I think if we can keep this up, it is just the sweet spot for FNAF lore. Just absolutely beautiful. But yeah, that's definitely going to be it for now. So yeah, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.